being perfect, by the way, in being inclusive, in being diversified, and really including all groups in society. But I bet you have not ever seen such a challenging country such as Israel. We have security issues on a constant basis. That's a constant factor. You know you have security issues. Doesn't matter at this very moment if it's knives or rockets from the Gaza Strip. You know you have it. And again, you have social issues which you need to address. And the gaps have grown stronger in Israel. If I grew up in the 1970s and you would have like a very strong middle class, everybody basically, almost everybody was middle class, except in the peripheries, which is negative in the south, Galilee in the north. But there was a very strong middle class. As Israel was growing, again, since the beginning of the 1990s, and we have had high tech, and all the time people getting rich very, very quickly, and so the gaps have gone stronger and wider. So we need to make sure that we close these gaps and that people actually get equal opportunities. That was something that Yitzhak Rabin was very, very much concerned about, and he also understood the fact. I keep saying Israel is not like a typical melting pot. You have a melting pot in America, but the melting pot in Israel is constantly boiling. I cook quite a bit. You don't want it to boil all the time, just part of the time. And our melting pot is boiling all of the time. So you need to see how you're putting down the flames. And Yitzhak Rabin understood that you cannot always live on your sword and also take care of the social challenges. You need to make sure that you're solving problem by problem, like peeling an onion, bit by bit, just understanding your peers and understanding your fellow man. And even though, I keep saying that only someone who's loved Eretz Israel like he did, the whole of Israel, Judea and Samaria as well included, only a man like that is able to understand that the future solution is somewhat of a partition of the land. I want to make sure that I'm well understood. Make no mistakes. This is not just the Israeli part that is in charge of the fact that the Oslo Accords did not succeed, far from it, or did not succeed in full. Because if we have security cooperation nowadays, it is thanks to the Oslo Accords, and we do have security cooperation, even though in past days you can see what's going on, and it seems like we don't have cooperation, but it's not, even this uprising is not an organized uprising. But the question is, how do we create a safer surrounding for our children? How do we create a safer Israel? How do we create a stronger Israel? I walk around, I've stopped counting the lectures that I've been giving in the past few days. And I can tell you, it's so funny to see Israel from eyes of my friends in America, because Israel is the size of New Jersey, as you well know. And basically we have the shoulders of a very top model, right? Everything's very, very close. Everything's very, very close. People tend to think that we can, if we disengage from the Palestinians, then that will be it. Unfortunately, proof has it, when we disengage from the Gaza Strip, very extreme factors go in, like Hamas. So in any kind of partition that will take place, if it will take place, and hopefully we will find a way to make it happen. And just today, the Prime Minister, in a meeting with President Obama, said he feels committed to the idea of the two-state solution. So we need to see how it happens, but it's very, very clear that security measures must be met at a very high level. There's no doubt about it, because if there is something that has changed dramatically since 1993, is the fact that the Middle East has changed in an extreme, extreme way, and that is an understatement, I think, when we say extreme. Because you see, you have ISIS, and you have Jabhat al-Nusra, and you have Islamic Jihad, and you have Usra and Beit al-Maqdis, and you have all these movements, and you have a plane falling in Sinai because of a bomb. And you have to see how you bring on the moderates. And even Egypt is in the process of finding a way to be moderate. The cooperation, the security cooperation between Israel and Egypt is really at its peak. And we have Jordan quite concerned about what is going on, because probably to be one of the very first to be affected by anything that will happen. And they are bordering with Iraq, and they're bordering with Syria. All the refugee issues is really boiling. We understand that. You know how many immigrants Germany is going to be, how many refugees Germany is going to be absorbing this year? Over 1.2 million. That's just Germany. I'm wondering, I don't know. They have solutions. I met with Angela Merkel's deputy just about 2 weeks ago, and they feel well prepared for it. I think it's also something, something historical, something, healing for them in a way. So they feel well prepared. I hope they are. But we see that the world is changing, the climate is changing, and that is problematic. But being the small country that we are, in the neighborhood we are, and in which we want to stay, we need to find a way of approaching a future settlement with the Palestinians. And I will approach the issue of settlements before you ask me. Yitzhak Rabin froze the construction in the settlements in 1992. That was his first step. Because, in Israel, we have no natural resources. What we have is our coal, our heads, that's it. We have a bit of natural gas now. That's good, but it's not enough. But basically what we have is our minds. And I think it was very clear to him that in order to change the priorities, you have to give up something. You have to decide. When the settlements when they actually happened in the early 1970s or the middle of the 1970s, it was mainly for security reasons. At that point, I don't remember while I was very young at that time. I don't think it was an ideological kind of thing. It became to be ideological. It became to be characterized with fundamentalism. But he decided to freeze the constructions. Until today, the heads of the settlers say that he was a man of his word, because everything that concerned security, the security of the settlers, he took care of. But he wanted to make sure that there are no additional settlers coming in, preventing any kind of a future solution. Nowadays, unfortunately, past governments have been building, and mainly I would say, even the ones that aren't building are allowing too many illegal settlements to come about. And probably I would think that is the most concerning issue of them all. Because everybody knows, I think, including the settlers themselves, know that eventually, except for maybe very, very, very extreme, polarized right-wing activists, on the verge of terrorism, some of them, but very few. And I think even they know that eventually we're talking about clusters as part of any future solution. We have, some of my peers in my party have offered what is called an disengagement reimbursement kind of law for people who already want to say, okay, we understand, we want to get out of the settlement, come back, or live in one of the clusters. That is also an option, and they will be given money for that, given some kind of settlement. The same as was with the settlers in the Gaza Strip. So that would be by their own choice, without having to go through the motions of a disengagement. We all know it's going to be terrible. There's no doubt. It's going to be terrible, whatever shape or form. We just need to make sure it never goes into something like a civil war, which was our main concern when the disengagement from Gaza happened. I'm very concerned about what's going to happen when Abu Mazen retires, because I don't see any leadership there. There was an article while I was here in the Wall Street Journal. Someone was saying, I don't remember, I apologize, because I don't remember who wrote it, but someone was saying, we need to see who's the FW, the clerk of Israel. And someone in one of the places that I was lecturing in said, when I was reading it, I was thinking, who is the Nelson Mandela of the Palestinians? I.e., it's not the same conflict, by the way, by all means. The comparison is not good. But the idea of leadership is there. And that is true. You have to have leaders that are willing to speak about their narrative without derogating and without dismissing the other party's narrative. That is not an easy thing to do. I'll finish up by a very small story that and I will open the floor for questions, but when I was 3 years old, actually my first childhood memory is the siren of the Yom Kippur War in 1973. I remember the siren. I remember my parents had a small blue radio, if you remember, in the early 1970s. And I remember my father taking me on his shoulders, running down to the shelter. And after that, I didn't see him for 6 months, because he was in the Golan Heights for 6 months. When he came back, I didn't recognize him, because he had a beard and his glasses broke. He was heartbroken, the story has it. I don't remember that in particular. I do remember the siren. And it was my life dream that it will not be my children's first memory. Last year, during Protective Edge, came about to be their first childhood memory. My twins were 3 at that time. And sirens are their first childhood memory, because their kindergarten was in a very small, in a very old kind of house in Tel Aviv. And they would have to pretend they were beetles in order to make sure that they're not hurt if anything falls, God forbid, a wall or a ceiling. And you could see the missiles over your heads all the time, because sometimes you didn't have enough time to go to the shelter once the siren was going off. We need to see how we create a new vision for Israel. I think Yitzhak Rabin started off. I do not want to believe that his vision has stopped. I think our challenges are growing on a daily basis. But there are amazing things still happening in Israel today. We just need to make sure that the future brings about really a better future for all people in the region. And if you didn't understand, you know, I love my country very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Nahmias Verbin. We are now going to take questions. We ask you to be cognizant of the university's open speech policy. We simply ask for good, fair, hard questions, not manifestos. You'll see people walking around with microphones. And why don't you just call on those speakers who you think you'd like to address?
Oh my God, can you stop? Oh, yeah, Noah will help me out.
I'll be the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'm a polite Israeli. That's very strange. Just let everything go.
Sam, where do you come?
Where?
I usually don't need a microphone.
Oh, yeah, you still don't.
The type of government that your country has is very much different from the type of government that we have here. Yet both seem to give a lot of power to extremists. Comment?
I think polarization is a problem of the world. I agree with you in that respect. I think we see it everywhere. We see it in Europe as well. You see the left either losing power or giving power to people like Corbyn in England, who's heading the Labour Party nowadays, and it's basically an anti-Semite. Now, it's very, very difficult for a Jew to be anti-Semite, but apparently it's possible biologically. Because, you know, I can say a lot of things about the Jews, but I'm Jewish, but I'm not anti-Semite, and he's anti-Semite. So you see, alongside fundamentalism, and I always explain to people, Islam is not all fundamental. As is, you know, right-wing people in Israel, they are not all fundamentals. And We need to see there is something, I don't know, is that the climate change? I don't know what's going on in this world. It must be, because something is really causing this drift. Quite draconian if you look at it. And I think it's very, very concerning, and we need to see, I've been to at least 3 engagements of interfaith while I was here. And I think we need to bring these moderate voices out loud. We need more moderate leaders. And the world has quite a good choice of moderate leaders. So we need to work hard on that. And the problem with extremists is that they are always the loudest. So the moderate ones have to be loud too.
Hi, my name is Baruch. I'm an MBA student here at Georgetown. Thank you so much for coming today.
You're so lucky.
Do you think, had the elections turned out differently and had there been a left-wing coalition and your party at the head, do you think there are any steps that they could have taken or would have taken that could have actually prevented this current wave of uprising? It just seems like the leadership in the Palestinians is very weak and that there's a lot of lack of interest in a fair agreement that I don't even know, if any government would have made a difference to this.
When Yitzhak Herzog was actually arrived this morning in Washington as well, is going to be appearing in the GA this afternoon. When Yitzhak Herzog and Tzipi Livni, our former Minister of Foreign Affairs, were running the campaign, they were also pragmatic. They weren't talking about a very short term. Nobody thought we could reach an agreement in a very short term. We spoke about steps that will return the trust and faith between the parties. Of course, it takes both parties to do that. There's no doubt about it. You need 2 to tango. And I've spoke to Tzipi Livni, who's really been a part of the negotiations for many, many years. And I spoke to her at length about Abu Mazen's part in the fact that we're not able to reach any kind of progress. Not even, who's thinking about settlement? I said this morning that I'm very sad about the fact that I'm not speaking about the arrangements or the settlements, any kind of future settlements with the Palestinians. I'm not talking about peace. I speak about it like a mechanic. And I think that's very sad, the fact that I'm really talking about it like a technician. We're talking about a car. The thing is, you have to be a technician about it, and you have to try and create small baby steps that will return the faith of both parties. And that's not an easy thing to do. I thought that Netanyahu gave a good speech a month and a half ago in the UN, and I hardly ever think that Netanyahu gives good speeches. And I thought he gave a good speech. I think he really reached out to Abu Mazen saying, no preconditions, let's just go back to the table. There's also something else that I've been explaining in the past couple of days in regards to President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu's relationship. And I said, sometimes leaders are people. Sometimes there's no chemistry there, We need to understand that. We just don't think of them as human beings, but they are human beings, regardless of the mistakes that were made. I'm putting that aside. So I think there are baby steps that need to be taken to recapture any kind of potential settlement, because annexation, from my perspective, is a bad thing, because that will create a one-nation state. Autonomy, I think we're way behind autonomy. And that's why we need to see how we are separating, disengaging from the Palestinians in a different way. And that takes a lot of tolerance and a lot of confidence and some patience as well. Yitzhak Rabin spoke about it. I will continue to negotiate as if there was no terror and fight terror as if there are no negotiations. And that is something that every leader in Israel has to bear in mind.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that there's another optimistic Israeli here. I like to think I am, but it's sometimes tough in these days. So I'm originally from Jerusalem, but my question actually pertains to...
What's your name?
Nitzan.
And what are you studying?
International politics here in the undergraduate level.
Just make sure you return to Israel, okay? Is that allowed to say?
I really do want to. And my question really pertains to women's contribution to the negotiations to leadership, I wonder, do you see